I'll just wait till Helena shows up. There you are. All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to the hearing. This meeting is being held electronically in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001. The procedures for the meeting are per the town's procedural bylaw and the electronic meeting protocol during emergencies. And I declare we do have quorum. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred spaces, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations. All right. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment agenda dated October 13, 2021 be hereby adopted and as printed and circulated. All in favor? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none. Moved by Brandon Stapleton, second by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes dated September 15, 2021, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public meetings to consider applications for minor variances to the zoning bylaw. The input received by agencies, public, and staff is important in order for the committee to make sound planning decisions. The procedure to be followed in these meetings will be as follows. A brief explanation of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting the applications. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address. And please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Once the hearing is concluded, the input received will be considered by the committee prior to making a decision on the applications. If you wish to be notified of a decision of the committee, you must file a written request for notification. And with that, we'll move to our first one. Richard is speaking to the Daniels and Patton Odd application.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And I'm told you can now see that.
Yes, I can.
Great. So thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 164 Camp Newport Road. The lot is designated waterfront and zoned shoreline residential 1. This matter is back before the committee for a third occasion at the request of the applicant. Following the second hearing on July 14th, 2021, a decision was postponed to give the applicant time to revise their proposal. Accordingly, in consideration of concerns raised relating to building siting and feedback received from neighbors and committee. As committee will recall, the applicant is redeveloping their property following a total loss of their dwelling and attached deck from a fire. The proposal has, on this occasion, the proposal has been modified to include a smaller 65.3 meters squared, 1.5 story dwelling with freestanding decks at entrances projecting 1.22 meters into both the northern side yard and front yard. And I'll just show you that. So the dwelling is in the same location as previously proposed, or as you previously saw it on July 14th. It's been made smaller, and there are now freestanding decks located in the northern side yard and front yard. A minor variance is required to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to just 10.4%, reduce the required side yard setback from 6 meters to 2.5 meters for the dwelling, and that's on both sides. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 11 meters. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 9.8 meters for this 7.44 meter squared freestanding deck. Reduce the northerly side yard setback from 6 meters to 1.3 meters for this 1.44 square meter freestanding deck. And reduce the required setback from a leaching bed in an enhanced treatment system to a shoreline from 30 meters to 24 meters. And that's this setback here. As previously noted, a 67.85 square meter one-story dwelling with 66.64 meter attached deck, a 3.39 meter squared shed, and a 1.63 meter squared privy toilet existed on the property prior to the fire, giving the lot, yes. However, not all aspects of the structures that existed on the property prior to the fire would have been legal non-complying, as it appears additions to expand the footprint of both the dwelling and deck occurred without approvals. As committee was advised on July 14th, 2021, if the dwelling, if the dwelling and deck additions are assumed not to have been established on the site lawfully, the legal non-complying dwelling and deck aspects would be reduced to approximately 49 meters squared and 34 meters squared, implying that the existing lot coverage of 13.28% existed on the property for legal complying structures, non-complying structures prior to the fire. This slide shows the July 14th proposal and the October 13th proposal side by side to help illustrate the redesign. So the new proposed smaller dwelling, down from 83.57 meters squared to 65.03 meters squared, maintains a 2.5 meter setback, whereas before it was 2 on both the north side and south side, and this was to address concerns raised by abutting landowners. Also, to address concerns from abutting landowners, the detached garage is no longer proposed. And to facilitate the reduced width of the dwelling, a side entrance is proposed on the north side of the dwelling and at the front facing Skeleton Lake. This was to save space by eliminating the need for a central hallway in the building. Freestanding decks associated with these entrances are proposed to permit these entrance locations with projections of 1.2 meters into the north and west of the dwelling. The redesigned dwelling is shown here. Elevations show a cottage that has been redesigned and a significantly reduced scale to address the site constraints and match the surrounding neighborhood character. While the redesigned dwelling is still encroaching within the 30-meter setback and 15-meter wide shoreline buffer, the smaller scale of the dwelling implies that these encroachments are now reduced over what had previously been proposed. Additionally, the landowner has agreed to undertake revegetation between the proposed new dwelling and the lake, as well as elsewhere on site where space permits to offset the area of encroachment with the within the typically required shoreline buffer and setback. Given that a septic system with enhanced treatment and site revegetation within the buffer and elsewhere is now proposed, staff are of the opinion that the applicant's modified proposal provides appropriate compensating measures, which are required in town official plan policies, where development is proposed within 30 meters of a cold water lake or a lake trout habitat. These are the site photos, once again, just to illustrate the constrained nature of the site, which the redesigned dwelling now appears to respect. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Skeleton Lake Association, and no written comments were received. It's noted that letters of support were provided by the abutting landowners, whom were individuals that previously shared concerns respecting past approvals. The application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Additionally, the application appears to satisfy the 4 tests for a minor variance as set out in section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and therefore staff are recommending conditional approval. A condition relating to the implementation of required revegetation measures through site plan control is recommended. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
That's great. Thanks very much. I'll ask the applicant or the representative to make any comments.
The applicant or representative is reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see one hand raised.
Okay.
Please note that during the transition, your video panel will be momentarily interrupted. Once you've been added to the meeting, your video will appear in the committee member panel. Please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and confirm your name and mailing address.
Hello, Greg
Mr. Bruce.
Hello. Committee members, Greg Bruce from Timber Block, representing the applicants here. Thank you, Richard, for everything. There's been lots of back and forth. We're all very familiar with this project. I really did appreciate Richard's input, in the last couple of weeks. Really, that it really made sense. The neighbors are happy. I really liked Richard's idea about the shoreline buffer, because we can't really hit the 15 meters and address all the septic and the neighboring wells, that the whole site will be revegetated, and we can control that with a site plan agreement. So basically what we're going to trade off is that 15 meters that we're showing is 11 meters. The difference in that, they're going to add some natural vegetation to the back of the site that will enhance it, because you can see it was fairly bare before. So I really thought that was a good idea. Overall, Richard hit everything on the head there. It's a modest size. We've done the fish habitat study. We will enter into a site plan agreement. We're going to increase the vegetation. We're going to have a septic now versus an outhouse. There's going to be flood protection. There's going to be a lot grading plan now. And the wells are a non-issue that used to encroach within the septic. So it really seems to be a win across all areas, except for the setback from the water. But both neighbors, that was never a concern of theirs. They were more concerned, Pat on the south side was more concerned about the view from the back to the road. So this actually addresses and is more favorable displacement to what he's looking for. So I just see this as a win all around. Thank everybody for their patience for this, and be happy to get this thing going and build it throughout the winter so it's not disrupting their summer for the neighbors next year.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. If you could just turn your video off, and you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, my apologies. I thought it was shutting off my video.
All right. Perfect. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Wonderful. Committee members, any comments or questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you to staff and the applicant for managing this to a place where everyone can be happy. So I'm thrilled with that. I will read the resolution. Moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that minor variance application A40 2020 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 3.1.16 and 5.3.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to increase the primary lot coverage from 10% to 10.4%, reduce the required side yard setback from 6 meters to 2.5 meters for a 1.5 story, 35.03 square meter single detached dwelling. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 11 meters for a 1.5 story, 65.03 square meter single detached dwelling. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 9.8 meters for a 7.44 square meter freestanding deck. Reduce the northerly side yard setback from 6 meters to 1.3 meters for a 1.44 square meter freestanding deck. And reduce the required setback from a leaching bed in an enhanced treatment system to a shoreline from 30 meters to 24 meters, conditional on revegetation measures being implemented to the satisfaction of the town through a site plan agreement to establish a shoreline buffer between the proposed development and Skeleton Lake and elsewhere on site as feasible to offset the area of encroachment within the typical shoreline buffer and the 30-meter setback area. Any comments or questions? All in favor? And that is carried.
Thank you very much. And thanks to Greg for all the stick handling on that.
Thanks, Richard. Before we go on to the next application, I need to note that application A140 2021 HTE Wingalar at 255 Enna Drive. It was not included in the agenda, but it will be included next month, and we apologize to the applicants. And with that, Adam is going to speak to the Wilson application on King Crescent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just going to share my screen. Is everyone able to see that all right?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 32 King Crescent. The lot is designated urban shoreline residential, and the lot is zoned residential 1. An application has been submitted to recognize the location of a retaining wall within the shoreline buffer and also increase the accessory lot coverage from 5% to 5.13% for the proposed floating dock. So here on the sketch, you can see there are 2 retaining walls. They are existing on site now, outlined in this dark gray color. And then the addition for accessory structure is this proposed floating dock located here on the sketch. Section B of the official plan requires lot frontages to be maintained in a natural state to a depth of 15 meters where new lots are being developed. It also states that where lots are already developed or further development is proposed and located within this urban shoreline residential area, these targets should be achieved to the furthest extent possible. And where these requirements cannot be met, a net improvement over the existing situation is required. Given the location and scale of these being within the 15 meters, staff are of the opinion this development does not represent a net improvement to what was previously there, and this policy is not being maintained. Further to that, during the installation of the retaining wall, it was determined that the integrity of a butternut tree, which is an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act, was compromised. Staff are recommending consultation with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks occurs, specifically in regards to the applicable requirements of the Endangered Species Act regarding this tree that is potentially impacted as a result of the retaining wall construction. A condition has been included to ensure that future works benefit from the site plan control process. And here are some site photos taken on site representing the scale of the accessory or the retaining wall As you can see, it's in two tiers, as well as the entire shoreline area is now gravelled as well. And here are some more photos. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and both to the Vernon Ferry Lake Association. No comments have been received. Staff are of the opinion that a portion of the minor variance respecting the recognition of the retaining wall within the shoreline buffer is not a minor variance, does not meet our official plan policies, and does not satisfy the four tests of a minor variance. As a result, staff are recommending that that portion of the application be denied. Further, with respect to the application for increased accessory lot coverage, staff are of the opinion that that portion of the variance application is minor in nature and satisfies the four tests of a minor variance and should be for the floating dock only, conditional on removal of the non-complying retaining wall and then revegetation to establish suitable shoreline buffer within 15 meters of the Muskoka River shoreline. And lastly, the consultation with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks regarding the butternut tree. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'll call on the applicant or their representative to make any comments about this.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see one hand raised.
Okay.
A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking and confirm your name and mailing address. Oh, and Chair Stone, I actually see two hands raised. Would you like them brought in one at a time?
Unless it's the applicant and their representative, which I suspect it is, you can bring them both in.
Okay, good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Graham Huizinga with Wayne Simpson and Associates, Land Use Planners, 76 King William Street, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1E4. I'm here on behalf of Doug Wilson, who I see is also in the call, and he'll have some things to add as well to the history of the property shortly. But I figured I would just start off with the kind of the brief history that I've been involved with this project and how we came to this point and my planning opinion on the matter. So thank you to staff for working with us on this project. My understanding of the history from the point that I was brought on was that Mr. Wilson had hired a contractor or a landscaper to do some work on this shoreline retaining wall system, as he's observed in the past 30 odd years that he's lived on the property, that he's been experiencing a lot of erosion activity from both the street side and also from wake from boats coming through the channel, as I'm sure you all know, some of which don't really respect the slow speed recommendations through that section of the channel. So he's been experiencing a lot of wave action running up on his shoreline that way, and also storms taking soil out of his property from the street side. In addition, the town also has a drainage easement that runs very close to and in some points on this property that takes care of drainage from King Crescent and North Road there, and brings that down across the property and in between this property and the abutting property, and also contributes to some erosion. So the raison d'etre of this retaining wall system was to take care of erosion. It was not as much an aesthetic pursuit or a way to kind of reorganize the shoreline as it was to kind of stop this historic pattern of erosion and soil loss that the property owners have been seeing over the past few decades. It seems that they consulted with the town, but there was kind of something got lost in translation, and essentially the town had advised the property owner's contractor that landscaping would not require any special approvals. Of course, the town was not aware that they were referring to landscaping in the nearshore area. when that advice was given. So it's an unfortunate miscommunication, but it's led to the retaining wall being built and being present on the property today. So while I do understand and respect the opinion of staff that the extent of the retaining walls across the frontage of the property and the depth to which they extend does not meet the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, I do also have to point out that this is not a paper exercise. Of course, we're talking about something that already exists, and denying this variance, unfortunately, would kind of indicate that the town's opinion on the matter is that the retaining wall should be taken out. And I do believe, and we also have a report from an arborist regarding the butternut tree in particular, but also many of the other mature trees on the property, that removing the retaining wall would do far more damage than leaving it in place, and kind of respectfully working around the retaining wall with a revegetation plan, which is what I'm proposing. The butternut tree was assessed by an arborist, and although the installation of the retaining wall was determined that it might have some negative impacts on the health of the tree long term, the arborist also concluded that the retaining wall was probably the best bet at keeping that butternut tree in place, because the soil loss was getting to a point where the roots of that tree were actually coming out of the ground, and at some point it probably would have toppled into the river on its own without some kind of intervention. So the applicants are happy to work with MECP to address that specific tree. We're happy to work with the town to address some kind of revegetation plan to kind of blend this wall in and ensure that it functions as an erosion break as it was intended to, but also is kind of aesthetically more in keeping with the policy guidance for a natural shoreline through the Huntsville urban area. So I think Doug Wilson has some things he'd like to add, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. So if you can take your video down, Graham, and if Mr. Wilson can show up.
We're working on it.
Okay.
How do you turn it on? Start video.
There you go.
Are we in?
Yep, I can see the top of your head.
Oh,
Hold on. There we go.
oh, I got you. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Doug Wilson from 32 King Crescent, and my wife Marion and I are the homeowners at that address. So I appreciate the comments that Graham has made, and he's covered it quite well. I would just have a few comments of my own, if I may.
Please.
We clearly understood that no permit is required for landscaping over the past 36 years. We've had occasion to do upgrades on our property and have always obtained a permit where required. As a mature neighborhood in the heart of downtown Huntsville, it's been nice to see that the residents of the community have continually worked to upgrade the properties in the area. There are homes with various landscaping schemes along the way, some with lawns reaching to the edge of the property, while others have stone or rock, such as the new home being built on Church Street. Ours was quite rough, consisting of weeds and coarse grass, and in a state of serious erosion, which we have made an effort to remediate over the years past. This year, an opportunity opened for us to deal with this erosion issue by enhancing the landscaping in question. In April, our contractor contacted the Public Works Department to seek permission to have the landscaping material dropped onto the road in front of the house. This was approved. Next contact with the town official was when Bylaw Officer Corey Cruson came by to inform us that a complaint had been lodged with regard to the landscaping project. Officer Cruson follow-up letter indicated that the concern was with respect to vegetation. Potential removal of the wall was never being mentioned, in spite of the fact that the contractor was still on site with his equipment and no stop work order was ever mentioned. We then followed up with the planning department, which resulted in a site visit by Richard Clark, followed by a further site visit by Kelsey Shadlock And now we understand the file is in the hands of Adam Ager. With regard to vegetation, the site is even now growing with much of the original Virginia creeper spreading rapidly over the area. Further revegetation is planned in the spring. It was never our intention to avoid our responsibility with regard to a required permit. However, due to the significant drop-off, removal of the new retaining structure would have a disastrous effect, causing further serious erosion and would put at risk the trees at the top, including the beautiful butternut. Now, I just want to make a few points here. Officer Cruzen's letter indicated if we wished a minor variance, contact the planning department. Now, did the committee receive a copy of that letter or have a copy on file? The main concern would seem to be vegetation, which had not yet been started. A load of topsoil to deal with this still sits in our yard. No direction has been received from the planning department as to what would be satisfactory. As stated prior, just rough grass and weeds were present on the property. Now, I have contacted the Muskoka Conservancy Association and have from the internet received a list of potential vegetation for the area. None of which were in existence prior to now. Pictures from the 2005 indicate serious erosion dealt with permits as it involved work on the waterfront. We have the committee had an opportunity to view those pictures. Richard's letter of July 6th, please turn to item C, suggests that we consult with tree experts. This was done. You have a report, also the letter from Richard, read paragraph C again. It seems the position of this item has changed somewhat as recommendations have been made to the committee to have the wall removed. During the process, not one tree was removed or one bit of soil was removed from the property. A great deal of topsoil was added. The impact of serious unchecked erosion on the waterfront could be a serious liability issue for the owner of the property if not addressed. For example, if our boathouse was at risk as in 2005 or failed due to erosion, who would be responsible for the remediation of that? Now, in closing, let me tell you that we now sit and enjoy the resulting view. We have many boaters going past by giving us a positive shout out for our efforts. Hopefully the committee will focus on the positive aspects of this landscaping project and not be inclined to a negative outlook. Thank you very much for hearing me out. And if anyone has any questions, I'd certainly be pleased to try to answer them satisfactorily.
Thanks very much, Mr. Wilson. If you could stay with us, but if you can mute your microphone and turn your video off, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
And I will ask if there's any member of the public that wishes to speak to this application.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Members of committee, any comments or questions? Mr. Donald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I guess a comment more than a question. Perhaps it will result in a question if you'll just bear with me. I note that the proposed concept plan attachment 2 of the sketch developed and put together on August 9th, which was post dates the actual work being done. It's only reflecting the work that's actually been done, which I totally understand. I don't see any proposal to indicate an intermediary step between removal of the wall and leaving it as is. Has any thought been given to that? Has there been any discussion, perhaps through you, Chair, to Adam? Has there been any discussion of an intermediate step other than the removal? Or are we just going with black and white?
Adam?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, as you've heard, this application has passed through a few different people in our office, and my understanding was the conversation, you are correct, the work was done already prior to an application being made, and the plan that's proposed right now just indicates what's existing on site. I believe the option was given to the applicant that they could go forward with a minor variance to try to maintain what's currently existing as is, save and accept the floating dock addition, but the retaining wall specifically, if they wanted to keep it, they needed a minor variance. It would have to go to committee. And should that not have a favorable outcome, I don't know if next steps were discussed, but if the direction was given that in order to keep the wall as is constructed, a variance would need to be granted.
Thanks for that. Any other comments from committee? I would like to make a comment. Mr. Wilson is a respected businessman and a long-term resident of Huntsville, and he's certainly a good citizen. That being said, this wall is egregious. It flies in the face of our official plan. If this were a precedent in any way, it would endanger our waterways. Huntsville has been very proactive in maintaining vegetation along the ribbon of life, is what we like to call it, on either side of the shore. And therefore, our waters here in Huntsville are said to be the best in all of Muskoka, because we've been doing this for a long time. Personally, we cannot let this stand. If there's an intermediary option or something else to help reduce the erosion of the shoreline, then I would be open to looking at it. But as it stands right now, it simply needs to be revegetated for the health of Huntsville. Mr. Huizinga, if you have a very short comment, you may make it.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate your concerns, and I hear what you're saying. And from the photos that are provided of the wall right now, it does look egregious, to use the word that you used. One of the conditions of the variance that I would like to see carried forward, if the retaining wall is allowed to remain, would definitely be a site plan agreement process with the town that would address revegetation. So what, in my mind's eye, what I'm seeing is this retaining wall remaining to address the erosion issue, and a large series of replantings, bushes, trees, everything in between, that will kind of blend this retaining wall in with the rest of the area while achieving the purpose of that retaining wall, which is to stop erosion. I mean, we can remove that retaining wall and then we're just left with a bare slope, and that soil is going to make its way into the river fairly quickly. We could do revegetation without that retaining wall, but that problem of erosion is going to remain, and those trees are probably going to end up in the river as well. So in my opinion, the best way forward is to keep the wall as it is and work with the town and Mr. Wilson, and he's totally willing to do this with doing a large series of replantings across 75% of the frontage.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't want to make a response to Graham's comments. We have a motion in front of us, and if there's no other comments or questions, I'm going to read it. Mr. Donald?
Thank you, Chair Stone. I struggle with this because I don't consider this to be a minor variance in approving a wall of a structure of this size. And it does, to me, it goes to the heart of all of the issues around the preservation of the shoreline. There are numerous elements in this existing structure that contravene all of the recommendations from the perspective of the town. One of the previous applicants that we've discussed today had been given multiple opportunities to come back with alternative proposals. And I'm not sure how we did that initially, because it was quite a number of months ago. But I would like to propose that we have a similar strategy to address this. To your comment, I do find the wall egregious. I think it's an affront. It's an affront on the front, if you'll pardon the pun. So yeah, I'd like to see something come back to us rather than just denying it at this point. I want to recognize the applicant's willingness to do some kind of remediation, but I'd like to see what it is. The shoreline's been affected, the grading's been affected, we have a concrete wall. The applicant's out a lot of money, which is not really our concern. But I do think we have to recognize what could be done with this, given the situation that it's in just now.
So I will ask Adam, presumably, if we deny this application and the wall needs to come out, they must have some kind of a revegetation plan. And is that done through site plan?
Yeah, exactly, Mr. Chair. Through you, all works within the waterfront area, which is where this property is, would be subject to site plan control. So the removal of the wall and the revegetation would all be captured through the site plan process. So we'd be wanting to see native species and vegetation shrubs all return to the area. Our policy says minimum 75% of the shoreline be revegetated and 25% to a maximum of 15 meters, whatever is the lesser. Here in this case, we have 100% hardscaped. So we'd be looking to amend that when the wall's removed, and that would all be captured through site plan.
Thank you very much. All right, if there's no other comments or questions. Moved by Helena Renwick, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that a portion of the minor variance application A 38/2021 HTE be denied. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 3.1.18.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008 66P in order to recognize a retaining wall within the shoreline buffer, and that a portion of the minor variance A 38/2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 3.1.6 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008 66P in order to increase the accessory lot coverage from 5% to 5.13% for floating dock only. Conditional on removal of the non-complying retaining wall, revegetation to establish a suitable shoreline buffer within 15 meters of the Muskoka River shoreline, and consultation with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks regarding applicable requirements of the Endangered Species Act respecting butternut trees potentially impacted as a result of the retaining wall construction. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Adam. We are now moving on to the next application, the Sure and Matutat application. That's fun to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just share my screen. Are you able to see?
Yep.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 242 North Drive. The lot is designated waterfront and is zoned shoreline residential 1. The application has been submitted to permit the construction of a 25.6 square meter four-season sunroom addition. A minor variance is required to decrease the 6-meter required interior side yard setback to 3.9 meters for the sunroom addition only. The SR1 zone requires a 6-meter interior side yard setback for the single detached dwellings. The purpose of this provision is to ensure adequate distancing between development on abutting lots and to create a buffer between properties. The proposed sunroom addition is compliant with all of the required setbacks and lot coverage. Additionally, the sunroom addition is buffered by existing vegetation and is replacing a portion of a non-compliant deck. The subject lands are included in the waterfront designation of the official plan, which anticipates low density shoreline residential development that respects the character of the natural setting of the waterfront area. For this proposal, there will be minimal visual impacts from the water as the sunroom addition will be hidden by existing vegetation. The sunroom addition reflects the scale of the dwelling and surrounding waterfront character. Additionally, the sunroom addition is sited in the most appropriate location as it maintains existing building lines and is in a partially cleared area and does not encroach into the front yard setback. Oops, just going back a bit. The natural constraint mapping identifies deer wintering habitat and unevaluated fish habitat in the front of the property. To address these natural constraints, fish habitat and deer wintering habitat assessment was completed by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc. The report provides the background of fish habitat and deer wintering habitat, as well as an overview of the site conditions. The report concludes that there is a low likelihood of negatively impacting the fish and wildlife habitat and characterizes the fish habitat as type 2. Recommendations including the implementation of construction mitigation measures to further reduce any disturbances in the riparian area and the retention of existing tree cover will be implemented through site plan control should the minor variance be approved. The application has been circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and to the Lake Vernon Association. 3 letters of support were provided to committee prior to this meeting. The application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. The application appears to meet the 4 tests of a minor variance and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
The applicant or the representative are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see 1 hand raised.
Okay.
A reminder to please ensure that you have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on and confirm your full name and mailing address before beginning your comments.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Duncan.
Hello. Duncan Ross, representing the owners. Duncan Ross Architect, 36 Chafee Street, Suite 201, Huntsville, P1H 1J4. Nothing much to say about the presentation. I think it covered everything. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks very much. Then I will go out to the public and ask if there's any comments or questions from them.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Committee members, comments or questions? Seeing none. Moved by Kenneth Donald, seconded by Jason Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that minor variance application A37 2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 5.3.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to decrease the western interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 3.9 meters for a 25.6 square meter addition. All in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And Kelsey has our final application, the Francis application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just share my screen again.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you again, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 448 Muskoka Road 10. The lot is designated community residential and is zoned residential 1 exception 0206. The application has been submitted to permit the construction of a 26.75 square meter detached garage. A minor variance is required to recognize the south lot line as the front lot line, reduce the front yard setback from 7 meters to 1.5 meters, and to permit a garage to be located closer to the front lot line than the principal dwelling. The site-specific exception permits the existing lot area and lack of frontage. A consent application in 2013 adjusted the lot line between the two existing undersized lots that were developed as a front road abutting lot and a back lot. A zoning amendment in the same year recognized 0 meters of frontage on the municipally maintained road and the lot area of the subject property. The previous applications did not assign any setbacks to the lot line. Therefore, the recognition of the south lot line as the front lot line is important for the relief sought, as well as for any future development. With regards to the requested relief, the general provisions of the town's zoning bylaw provide a required detached garages be located no closer to the front lot line than the principal dwelling. The purpose of this provision is to ensure adequate setbacks and sight lines are maintained, and further that the street presence is consistent, character and presence is consistent. Relief is also required to reduce the front yard setback for the proposed detached garage. The intention of this setback is to ensure adequate distancing between developments on abutting lots and to create a buffer between properties and the road. In this instance, the proposed detached garage will be hidden from the road by the abutting lot, mitigating potential adverse impacts with respect to visual, traffic, and safety impacts. Additionally, the location of the garage is informed by the existing conditions and is within a previously developed area. There's also a small vegetated area on the east side of the south lot line, which helps screen the proposed garage from the abutting property. The subject lands are designated community residential within the official plan. Within this area, the permitted uses shall be limited to low density residential, and the continued residential use is in keeping with the official plan. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. No concerns or objections have been raised. The Planning Department had no objections. However, they note that the footprint of the property line needs to be pinned by an Ontario land surveyor. Therefore, the application would appear to conform with the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Therefore, the application appears to satisfy the 4 test of the minor variance, and staff are recommending approval. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments.
The applicant or their representative are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I do see one hand raised.
Okay.
A reminder to please have your microphone and video, if possible, turned on before you begin speaking, and confirm your name and mailing address.
Do we have a Jeopardy theme song we can play now, or?
My apologies,
No
Shamina.
worries.
Francis 448 Muskoka Road 10 P0B 1L0. We are the applicants. We thank Kelsey Shadlock for the work that she has done. Our neighbors have verbally agreed with the proposed garage that we would like to erect, and there were no comments against it. Thank you.
If you could just put your video down and just hang with us in case there's questions. Thanks. I'll call on members of the public to speak to this application.
Members of the public are reminded to use the raise hand button to indicate that they would like to address committee. And Chair Stone, I can confirm there are no hands raised.
Thank you. Members of the committee, do you have any comments or questions? All right, well, I'll read the motion then. Moved by Brandon Stapleton, seconded by Helena Renwick. Be it resolved that minor variance application A39-2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 3.1.15.1 and 5.2.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008-66P in order to recognize the south lot line as the front lot line, decrease the front yard setback from 7 meters to 1.5 meters for a 26.75 square meter detached garage, and permit a 26.75 square meter detached garage to be located closer to the front lot line than the principal dwelling. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. We'll now move into the non-public portion of the meeting to deal with consent applications. If the applicant or the agent wishes to make comments regarding their application, please raise your hand after the presentation. And Kelsey, I believe you're dealing with this single one here. Kirkies?
Great. I'll just share my screen again. Perfect. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 227 North Menominee Lake Road. The property is zoned Shoreline Residential 3 and is designated waterfront. The application was originally presented to committee on May 12th of this year. The application was submitted to permit an addition to an existing non-complying dwelling. A minor variance is required to recognize the non-complying side and front yard setbacks for the existing deck and dwelling, in addition to permit a further reduction to the front yard setback and increase primary lot coverage for the proposed 45.2 square meter addition as seen in the sketch. The original report, Development Report 2020-150, discussed relevant town, district, and provincial planning policies, as well as zoning provisions applicable to the application. Staff recommended denial as there was no fish habitat assessment submitted to satisfactorily address the fish habitat protection policies. The application has now provided a fish habitat assessment, which has been reviewed and has updated the updated presentation and report. The assessment provided a background on the Lake Menominee fishery and site conditions. Based on the observations of the report author, they characterized the shoreline fish habitat as type 2 and stated the existing shoreline vegetation is in excellent condition. The report also concludes by noting that with the recommended mitigation measures, there will be a net benefit to the water quality of Lake Menominee relative to the existing conditions. The recommendations, including the maintenance of existing vegetation and site-specific stormwater and erosion management, will be implemented through site plan control should the minor variance be approved. Approval is also conditional on the reduction of accessory lot coverage to ensure the proposal is more in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. To address the slope-related constraints, the development is sited on an appropriate flatter portion of the property, and mitigation measures to minimize vegetation removal outside of the building envelope and ensure tree preservation will also be implemented through site plan control should the minor variance be approved. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and to the Lake Menominee Association. No concerns or objections were raised. Based on the additional information provided to staff, we are of the opinion that the application now meets the 4 tests of the minor variance, and therefore staff are now recommending approval. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. Committee members, are there any comments or questions about this application? It's been before us before. All right, then I'm going to read the motion. Moved by Jason Fitzgerald, seconded by Brandon Stapleton. Be it resolved that minor variance application A13 2021 HTE be approved. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsections 5.3.4 of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2008 66P in order to recognize the front yard setback of 8.5 meters for an existing deck, recognize the front yard setback of 9 meters for an existing dwelling, recognizes south interior side yard setback from 0.9 meters for an existing deck, recognize the south interior side yard setback of 2.5 meters for an existing dwelling, permit a reduction in the front yard setback from 30 meters to 9.9 meters for a 85.2 square meter proposed addition, and increase the primary lot coverage from 5% to 6.4%, conditional on the maximum permitted accessory lot coverage being reduced from 5% to 1.3%. All of the recommendations contained within the fish habitat assessment prepared by Frycor Ecological Services, dated September 2021, being implemented through site plan agreement to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey. All right. So moved by Helena Remick, seconded by Kenneth Donald. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 10:02. Not bad. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, guys.